In a recent study by Donald McCabe, 40% of undergraduates at several institutions admitted to using sources in their paper they did not attribute. This is actually a large problem among college students and graduate students, and that is using sources without citing them. That is considered plagiarism, and it is a violation of our honor code. In this tutorial, I want to show you how to use sources ethically. I want to show you how to use direct quotes, how to use block quotes, and how to paraphrase. My name is Seth Allen. I am the online instruction librarian. I have two screens open here. The first screen is the academic one-file database. I have an article that I pulled from there. And then in the bottom screen here, I have a paper that I'm writing. Let's say the topic of my paper is the American reaction to the recent Ebola outbreak. Okay, I really like this article, and let's say I want to cite it in my paper. There is a particular paragraph in this paper that I want to use, and it talks about the history of epidemics in the United States and how that's related to our fear of immigrants. Okay, there are a couple of ways that I could cite it in my paper. Now I'm going to open up Word here and show you. Let's say I'm talking about Ebola and just epidemics in general and how it's related to this, and I want to copy and paste that entire paragraph. What I could do is I could copy the paragraph here, okay, and then go to the paper and I would paste it, which I've done here. And once I've pasted it, I want to go to the design, or excuse me, I want to go up to the top and I want to press the increase indent. What this does, this automatically moves over a large quote half an inch. And if you don't see the ruler here, you can go to View and then click on Ruler, and the ruler should appear. The reason that I do this is because whenever I'm using a large quote, which is 40 words or more from an article, it's called a block quote. All right, and a block quote should be blocked off with an indentation, and you see how it's indented here. All right, the next thing I want to do whenever I'm citing a source, no matter if I'm using a block quote or if I'm using a smaller quote or paraphrasing, is I want to include the author's name. So here I am writing about the Ebola epidemic and how it's like other epidemics in history. Then I write, furthermore, Al-Qabs, and then 2014 states that. All right, and you'll notice what I've done here is I've put the author's name, I've put the year of publication, I have taken that paragraph, and then I put a period. All right, let's say this was a book in print. If this was a book in print, I would need to put the page numbers that I got it from. Since it's an online source, and even though this online source doesn't have page numbers, we can count paragraphs. All right, so I see this is the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph in this essay. All right, so what I would do here is instead of writing page numbers, I would write para.4. Okay, what you're doing here is you're leaving a breadcrumb trail for your professors to go back. That way they can check the sources that you used, and they can make sure that you use them in context. All right, and it's good to use as many sources as possible. You know, it shows that you've done your research. And, you know, good research can really bolster your argument, whether you're writing a paper or you are preparing a speech. Okay, so that is one way of citing. That is the block quote. Okay, if you just want to take a quote, maybe a sentence or 3 or more consecutive words, what you do then is you take the quote. All right, so this is a sentence here that I've taken, and I'll put it in quotation marks. Okay, so again, I put the author's name, year of publication in parentheses, states that, And where the quote begins, I put it in quotation marks. And again, I type in the paragraph here, or if it's a book in print, I would put the page number. Okay. Whenever you use 3 or more consecutive words, make sure you put it in quotation marks. Also, if you're using a phrase that's unique to a particular author, maybe it's like a strange word that they're trying, or a strange phrase that they're trying to coin, you want to put that phrase in quotation marks. All right. The last thing to do, and the most common way of citing a source, is to paraphrase. Okay, so in this opening sentence right here, I say Ebola is like other epidemics in American history. They are often associated with immigrant groups and a fear of outsiders. Okay, in this example, I put the author's name and I put the year of publication. All right. Even though I'm not quoting directly from the source, I am paraphrasing. In other words, I'm taking the idea that I found in this essay. So even when I take an idea and it's not a direct quote, I still need to cite the source. Okay, so that's what I do here. All right, and again with this citation, you'll need to include where you found it. So paragraph 4. Okay. In some cases, you're going to have information that an author has cited from another source that you want to include in a paper. All right. This is what's called an indirect source. So in other words, you're citing what someone else has cited. All right. Generally speaking, you want to look down the source that they used and to actually to cite the original source itself. Sometimes it's impossible to track down, and in that case, you need to actually do an indirect citation. So let's say here I'm reading about epidemics in the United States, and there is a link to an article that's no longer available. Okay, and it says here, after the crack hysteria of the late 1980s, there were 74 television shows on the crack epidemic in the latter half of 1986 alone. All right, let's say I want to use this statistic in my paper. All right, because this isn't common knowledge, it clearly came from somewhere, you'll need to cite your source. Okay, so I'm going to go to the paper, all right, to the paragraph where I'm talking about the history of epidemics and public fear, and I'm going to say in 1986 there were over 74 shows about the crack epidemic. All right. Since the author cited what someone else wrote, I'm going to write as cited in, and I'm going to write the author's name, the year of publication, okay, and I'm going to leave space here so that I can find the paragraph. Now you want to make sure you go back to the article and you want to count the paragraph, and let's say this is the 6th paragraph. I'm going to write paragraph 6. Okay, and then I'll put a period after it. Okay, and again, this is what's called an indirect source, and you want to use it sparingly. Now that you've done an in-text citation, so this right here, or this, okay, you cited it in the body of the paper, you need to go and you need to make sure that it's included in your reference page. Okay, this is a citation that I created in APA style. So no matter whether you're using MLA or if you're using Chicago or another style, you still need to cite your sources with an in-text citation in the body of the paper, and make sure in your bibliography or works cited or reference page, and by the way, in APA style it's called a references page, you want to make sure that you cite your source there as well. So once in the body and once in the reference pages. Okay. A common thing that people do when they are using articles from a database is to use the citation tools. So I see here on the right there is a citation tools button, And if I click on it, it actually shows me how to cite my source here. Okay, I would recommend using these with caution. These are computer generated, so sometimes they're incorrect. Like in this example here, you'll see in the title of the article that there is a couple of words that are capitalized that shouldn't be. In APA citations, the title of the article, only the first word should be capitalized. Any words after a semicolon, and also any proper nouns. Okay, so like this panic, this word panic here should not be capitalized. All right, a good site to go to whenever you're looking for citations or how to do them is the OWL Writing Lab. I'm just going to Google OWL Writing Lab. Okay, and it's a website that was created by Purdue University. Okay, and on their site they have an APA formatting and style guide. All right, so it goes over all of the basics of how to cite different types of sources. It's a very accurate site. Okay, the final authority for APA and really any style is the style manual itself. So APA is now in its 6th edition, and I'm just going to Google it here, show you what the image looks like. This is the 6th edition, so this is the final authority when it comes to APA citation. So let's say in your field of study you're using APA, it may be worth it to buy the current edition. Now you can get an older edition for cheaper, but there are changes in the editions, particularly when you're using electronic sources. There's more detailed rules in the newest edition about how to cite those sources. So again, this is just a brief overview of how to avoid plagiarism. And just keep in mind, this is part of the Honor Code Agreement, is that you will not steal information, you won't plagiarize. And these are 3 tips about how to use information ethically through paraphrasing, through block quotes, and through direct quotes. I hope this helps. Thanks for watching.